Top Gun Maverick is nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture. Please welcome the one, the only Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise may be one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but even he has a list of people he refuses to forgive. For years, rumors have swirled about clashes, betrayals, and rivalries hidden behind the red carpets and blockbuster premieres. And now, we're diving into the 6 names that stand out the most. Join us as we uncover the 6 actors Tom Cruise reportedly hated the most. Brad Pitt. When Interview with the Vampire was first announced in the early 1990s, it was one of the most ambitious projects Hollywood had attempted in years. Based on Anne Rice's best-selling novel, the film brought together 2 of the biggest young stars of the era, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. On paper, the casting looked like a dream. The film placed Cruise in the role of Lestat, the flamboyant and seductive vampire at the center of the story. Brad Pitt was cast as Louis, the brooding, guilt-ridden vampire whose relationship with Lestat drives much of the narrative. The pairing meant that the 2 actors would share countless scenes together, locked in a gothic rivalry that demanded chemistry, tension, and emotional weight. Producers hoped that Cruise's proven star power and Pitt's emerging charisma would blend perfectly. This was supposed to be a meeting of Hollywood titans at different stages of their careers, offering audiences something fresh and unforgettable. Instead, what happened was a production filled with tension, distance, and a complete lack of connection between the 2 leads. The problems started early and only got worse as filming continued. By Pitt's own admission in later interviews, his experience making Interview with the Vampire was one of the most miserable of his career. He has described the set as suffocating and emotionally draining, saying that the months of shooting were a daily struggle. Cruise, for his part, was completely committed to the role. Known for his extreme discipline, Cruise approached Lestat with full intensity. He immersed himself in the character, paying attention to every detail of his performance, from physical gestures to vocal delivery. His methodical approach demanded focus, energy, and often total seriousness from those around him. Pitt, however, was not on the same wavelength. Playing the melancholy Louis required him to embody a withdrawn, weary character, and that mood seemed to carry over into his off-camera behavior. Pitt kept his distance, rarely engaging with Cruise outside of what the scene required. Crew members noted that the 2 rarely interacted between takes. While Cruise was energetic and precise, Pitt often appeared detached, as though he was simply enduring the long days of filming rather than fully investing in them. This difference in working style created an atmosphere that was anything but collaborative. Cruise reportedly hoped to build some level of camaraderie with Pitt, expecting that their shared responsibility for carrying such a major production would naturally lead to bonding. Instead, he got silence and visible discomfort. The chemistry that could have translated into a dynamic on-screen partnership was replaced with cold professionalism. Once the film was released, fans and critics picked up on the lack of warmth between the 2 stars. While Interview with the Vampire found its audience and eventually earned cult status, the strained dynamic between Cruise and Pitt became a well-known story in Hollywood circles. Pitt did little to hide his feelings once the project was over. In later interviews, he openly described the production as one of the worst experiences of his career. He did not directly insult Cruise, but his honesty about the misery he felt while making the film was a clear reflection of how unhappy he had been. He even admitted that he had wanted to leave the project halfway through, only staying because of contractual obligations. Cruise, on the other hand, said nothing. True to his reputation for keeping personal or negative experiences private, he never acknowledged the tension, never commented on Pitt's remarks, and never offered his side of the story. His silence spoke volumes, especially in an industry where silence is often interpreted as confirmation. Decades have passed since Interview with the Vampire, and both Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt have gone on to long and hugely successful careers. Cruise remains one of Hollywood's biggest action stars, headlining massive franchises like Mission Impossible. Pitt has become an Oscar-winning actor and producer, earning respect for balancing blockbuster roles with acclaimed dramatic performances. But despite both men sitting at the very top of the industry, they have never worked together again. Not once. For 2 actors of their level, who have been part of countless ensemble casts, that absence is noticeable. It suggests that neither had any desire to repeat the experience. In fact, within Hollywood, it is often whispered that Cruise quietly ensures such pairings never happen again. Once someone breaks the sense of loyalty or teamwork that he values, the chance for reconciliation disappears. And this was only the first of Tom Cruise's unforgettable feuds. Wait until you hear about the next one, because that one didn't just stay on set. Brooke Shields. When Brooke Shields published her memoir, Down Came the Rain, in 2005, she was not just telling her story. She was breaking new ground in how celebrities talked about motherhood and mental health. Shields revealed her painful struggle with postpartum depression after the birth of her first child. She described the overwhelming sadness, anxiety, and disconnection that took her by surprise during what was supposed to be one of the happiest times of her life. She also shared how antidepressants had played a crucial role in helping her recover. For many women, hearing someone as famous and admired as Brooke Shields speak openly about something so stigmatized was both shocking and comforting. It gave them permission to admit their own struggles. That same year, Tom Cruise appeared on NBC's Today Show to promote his new blockbuster, War of the Worlds. During the interview, host Matt Lauer brought up the subject of psychiatric medication, and Cruise made his position very clear. A devoted follower of Scientology, Cruise strongly opposed psychiatry and the use of antidepressants. When the conversation turned to Brooke Shields' decision to take medication for postpartum depression, Cruise shocked many viewers. He said her choice was irresponsible and dangerous, suggesting that vitamins and exercise would have been better. His remarks came across as harsh and dismissive. Shields had put herself in a vulnerable position by talking about her struggles. Instead of support, Cruise publicly condemned her. For millions of people watching at home, the moment was deeply uncomfortable. Here was one of Hollywood's biggest stars calling out another celebrity by name, criticizing her most personal choices, and tying it all to his religious beliefs. Cruise's comments did not only upset Shields, they also angered doctors, mental health advocates, and everyday families who knew firsthand how serious postpartum depression could be. What might have been just another promotional interview turned into one of the most controversial moments of Cruise's career. Brooke Shields did not stay quiet. Within weeks, she published a powerful op-ed in the New York Times responding directly to Cruise's comments. She wrote that his statements were not only wrong, but harmful. By dismissing the real suffering that mothers experienced, he was spreading dangerous misinformation. Shields defended her decision to take antidepressants, explaining that they had helped save her life and her ability to care for her child. Her rebuttal was sharp but thoughtful, and it struck a chord with the public. Women who had gone through similar struggles felt that she had spoken for them. Mental health professionals praised her for standing up to stigma and for setting the record straight. The media overwhelmingly sided with Shields, painting Cruise as out of touch and insensitive. The debate became bigger than the two celebrities. It highlighted a cultural shift. More people were beginning to understand that mental health was just as important as physical health, and that seeking treatment was not something to be ashamed of. Shields came out of the exchange with her reputation strengthened. Cruise, on the other hand, faced one of the biggest PR crises of his career. The timing could not have been worse for Cruise. War of the Worlds was one of the biggest releases of the year, and instead of focusing on the film, headlines were dominated by his clash with Shields. The fallout from the interview hurt his image. Fans began questioning his judgment, and critics accused him of being controlled by Scientology's strict rules. Reports later surfaced that Cruise had reached out to Shields privately to apologize. She confirmed that he had extended an olive branch, and while she accepted, it was clear the damage was permanent. Insiders say the relationship never recovered. Whatever polite words were exchanged in public, there was no real reconciliation. Even years later, the effects of that feud linger. Shields and Cruise are never seen together at Hollywood events, despite moving in similar circles. Mutual friends say they maintain a deliberate distance. Shields has continued her career, embracing a wide range of projects and speaking openly about mental health whenever the opportunity arises. Cruise, meanwhile, has never again publicly criticized her, but has also never shown any sign of repairing the connection. And while this feud was damaging enough, The next clash would put Tom face to face with someone live on television in a moment that still gets replayed today. Matt Lauer. In 2005, Tom Cruise was in the middle of a huge publicity push for War of the Worlds. Directed by Steven Spielberg and packed with special effects, the film was positioned as one of the biggest releases of the year. At first, it seemed like just another routine media tour, but one particular appearance on NBC's Today Show ended up becoming one of the most infamous moments of his career. What should have been a standard promotional interview turned into a tense argument that the world would not forget. Cruise agreed to sit down with Today Show host Matt Lauer in June 2005. The interview began normally, covering his career, his relationship with Katie Holmes, and the upcoming release of War of the Worlds. Viewers expected Cruise to flash his usual smile, charm the audience, and give a polished performance as he so often did. Instead, the conversation shifted into dangerous territory when the topic of psychiatry and antidepressant medication came up. This was not a random subject. At the time, Cruise had already made headlines for criticizing actress Brooke Shields for using antidepressants to treat her postpartum depression. He had spoken publicly about his deep opposition to psychiatry, a belief strongly tied to Scientology, the religion he has followed for decades. Lauer, prepared for the controversy, asked Cruise to explain his position. From there, the interview spiraled into confrontation. At first, Cruise tried to explain why he opposed psychiatric medication. He said he believed it was harmful and unnecessary, pointing to vitamins and exercise as better options. Lauer, however, challenged him, pointing out that many doctors and patients had found antidepressants helpful and even life-saving. That pushback seemed to set Cruise off. The exchange grew tense quickly. Instead of calmly debating, Cruise leaned forward and began lecturing Lauer. He told him he didn't understand the subject and dismissed his arguments as uninformed. At one point, he called Lauer glib, a word that instantly stood out and became associated with the interview. His tone was sharp and his body language showed visible frustration. For a man who usually presented himself as cheerful and approachable, it was a rare and jarring moment of hostility. Millions of viewers watched live as the interview unfolded, and many more saw clips replayed on news programs throughout the day. What was supposed to be light morning television had turned into a clash over medicine, belief systems, and personal responsibility. For Cruise, it was one of the only times in his career where he lost control of the narrative. The reaction was immediate. The clip spread everywhere, long before the idea of going viral was common. Late-night comedians mocked it, news outlets dissected it, and people debated it around water coolers. Cruise, who had always been seen as a confident but carefully calculated star, suddenly looked confrontational and extreme. For many, the interview confirmed the perception that Cruise was not just a movie star, but a spokesperson for Scientology, a religion already viewed with suspicion by much of the public. Instead of talking about War of the Worlds, headlines focused on his beliefs and his behavior on Today. It was a disaster for the press tour, and the effects lingered far longer than the film's release. Behind the scenes, things were just as icy. People who were present later revealed that when the cameras stopped rolling, Cruise and Lauer did not exchange a handshake or any friendly words. There was only silence. The tension that viewers had seen on screen carried over after the show ended, making it clear that there was no chance of reconciliation. Years later, Matt Lauer's career collapsed in its own scandal. In 2017, NBC fired him after multiple women accused him of misconduct. His fall from grace was swift and permanent, and his once polished image was destroyed. The clash with Matt Lauer was unforgettable, but the next feud in Tom Cruise's life came with someone who turned his private world into public comedy, and that made the betrayal sting even more. Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen has built much of his career on comedy that feels loose, casual, and unfiltered. He jokes about everything from Hollywood culture to his own life, and his audiences love him for it. But when Rogen started using Tom Cruise as one of his favorite punchlines, the laughter came at a cost. What began as harmless late-night jokes eventually turned into a feud that Cruise never forgot. For a star as protective of his image as Cruise, Rogen crossed a line that could never be repaired. For years, Rogen found Cruise to be an easy source of material. He joked about Cruise's famously intense personality, pointing out how hyperactive and serious he always seemed in public appearances. Rogan also poked fun at the way Cruise sprinted in nearly every action movie, turning it into a running joke about his career. Another favorite target was Cruise's height. Rogan, like many comedians, made light of the fact that Cruise was shorter than many of his leading men and leading ladies. Combined with references to Cruise's devotion to Scientology, these jokes became a staple of Rogan's interviews, podcasts, and casual conversations. Whenever Cruise's name came up, Rogan had a story or a quip ready to get a laugh. The audience always responded. Talk show hosts leaned in. Crowds laughed loudly. Each retelling made the joke spread further, cementing the idea that Cruise was not just a movie star but a quirky character to laugh about. For Rogan, this was material that worked. For Cruise, it was a growing problem. The real turning point came when Rogan, along with director Judd Apatow, was invited to Tom Cruise's home. At the time, they assumed it was going to be a professional meeting. Cruise, who was known to occasionally reach out to younger comedians and filmmakers, had expressed interest in connecting with them. Rogan and Apatow thought they might be discussing a possible collaboration or project. Instead, according to Rogan's later accounts, the meeting took a strange turn. He claimed that what started as light conversation quickly shifted into something that felt like a Scientology pitch. Rogan described Cruise talking passionately about the religion, outlining ideas and beliefs in a way that made both him and Apatow uncomfortable. He later said the experience felt less like a creative brainstorming session and more like being recruited. What might have remained a private, awkward encounter soon became part of Rogan's comedy routine. He began retelling the story in interviews, on stage, and in podcasts. The details varied depending on the setting, but the core of the story was always the same. He and Apatow went to Cruise's house expecting one thing, and left feeling like they had been pitched on Scientology. Audiences found it hilarious, and the story gained traction online. It turned into one of Rogan's most memorable anecdotes. For Tom Cruise, the humor was anything but funny. While he is known for being a perfectionist on set, he is also known for being fiercely private off-set. He carefully guards the details of his personal life, his family, and his religious beliefs. To him, Rogan had crossed a major boundary. It was not just about the jokes themselves. By retelling the meeting and framing it as comedic material, Rogan had taken what Cruise considered a private moment and made it public entertainment. For someone as image-conscious as Cruise, this was a betrayal. In his world, trust and loyalty are everything, and Rogan had broken both. The consequences were swift, though never publicly spoken about. While Rogan continued to thrive in Hollywood, writing, directing, and starring in hit comedies, he was never invited to work with Cruise on any project. He was not asked to cameo in a Cruise film, not approached for a collaboration, and not connected to any production involving Cruise's name. And while Rogan's comedy left Cruise cold, the next feud came from an actor who didn't just mock him. He dismissed Cruise's entire career on live television. Mickey Rourke. In 2022, Tom Cruise was riding one of the highest waves of his career. Top Gun: Maverick had finally hit theaters after years of delays, and the movie instantly became a cultural event. Critics praised it as the film that brought audiences back to cinemas after the pandemic. Fans lined up to see it multiple times, filling theaters worldwide. Hollywood insiders and journalists hailed Cruise as the savior of the big screen experience. After decades in the business, he was being celebrated as the last true movie star, a man whose name alone could still guarantee a box office hit. It was not just another sequel for Cruise. Maverick was a passion project that he had personally shepherded. He worked closely with the filmmakers, insisted on real aerial stunts, and pushed himself physically in ways most actors would never consider. The result was a movie that didn't just rely on nostalgia, but felt fresh, emotional, and thrilling. For Cruise, it was a validation of everything he believed about cinema: hard work, practical effects, and putting the audience first. While nearly everyone in the industry seemed united in celebrating Cruise's triumph, one veteran actor decided to take a different approach. Mickey Rourke, never known for holding back his opinions, gave an interview that cut directly against the wave of praise surrounding Maverick. During an appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Rourke was asked about Tom Cruise and the massive success of Top Gun: Maverick. Instead of joining the chorus of admiration, Rourke delivered one of the bluntest critiques imaginable. He dismissed Cruise's entire career with just a few cutting words. He's been doing the same part for 35 years. Rourke went on to say that the movie didn't impress him at all. He described Cruise's work as shallow, repetitive, and lacking any real artistic depth. "That doesn't impress me," Rourke continued, making it clear that he didn't see Cruise as an actor in the true sense of the word. For Rourke, acting meant transformation and emotional risk. Cruise, in his view, was just playing variations of the same high-octane hero over and over again. The comments landed like a bombshell. At a time when nearly the entire film industry was celebrating Cruise, Rourke was the rare voice tearing him down. For most actors, criticism is part of the job. But for Tom Cruise, Rourke's words carried a sharper sting because of the timing and the subject matter. Top Gun: Maverick was not just another action movie for him. It was a project he had fought to make for years, against industry doubt and repeated delays. He had invested his reputation, his creative energy, and his personal commitment into making sure the film was a success. Rourke's attack wasn't just a critique of Maverick. It was a dismissal of Cruise's entire career philosophy. For decades, Cruise had been celebrated for his discipline, his ability to carry franchises, and his dedication to practical stunts that pushed the boundaries of what was possible on screen. By calling him shallow and repetitive, Rourke was saying all of that effort meant nothing. It wasn't just a bad review. It was a rejection of Cruise's legacy. Insiders say that Cruise took the remarks seriously. While he is known for never responding publicly to criticism, those close to him say he was deeply aware of Rourke's comments. They came at a moment when Cruise was finally being recognized for the cultural impact of his work, and the sting of that dismissal did not fade quickly. True to form, Tom Cruise did not fire back in public. There were no interviews where he addressed Rourke's words, no statements from his team, and no rebuttals in the press. To the outside world, it seemed as though he simply ignored it. But behind the scenes, the fallout was clear. Industry sources claimed that Rourke's words had consequences. Producers close to Cruise and Paramount, the studio behind Top Gun: Maverick, quietly made it known that Rourke would not be considered for any Cruise-led projects or Paramount productions linked to him. While Rourke has long had a reputation for being unpredictable and outspoken, this particular attack appeared to shut doors permanently. Hollywood is a small world, and power players like Cruise wield significant influence. The blacklist wasn't official, but the message was clear. Rourke had crossed a line, and there would be no going back. And if you think that feud was personal, wait until you see what happened when Tom's split with Nicole Kidman turned from romance to rivalry. Nicole Kidman. In the 1990s, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were one of Hollywood's most admired couples. They seemed to have it all: fame, beauty, blockbuster careers, and a glamorous presence that made them red carpet royalty. Their relationship began on the set of Days of Thunder in 1989, when Kidman was still a rising star, and Cruise was already one of the biggest names in Hollywood. They married in December of 1990, and for the next decade they were inseparable. The two adopted 2 children together, Isabella and Connor, and presented the image of a family that was both deeply private and deeply united. Magazine covers celebrated them as the perfect Hollywood couple. Their appearances at premieres, award shows, and high-profile events made them the centerpiece of celebrity culture at the time. In addition, they starred together in movies like Far and Away and the provocative Eyes Wide Shut, solidifying their reputation as both professional and personal partners. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. Behind the scenes, though, cracks were already forming. In February 2001, the couple announced their separation, shocking both Hollywood and the public. Cruise officially filed for divorce just days before their 10-year wedding anniversary. The timing raised eyebrows because, under California law, reaching a 10-year marriage often affected financial settlements, particularly when it came to spousal support and division of assets. Filing before that milestone potentially saved Cruise from a far more significant financial commitment. For Kidman, the divorce was devastating. She later admitted she had not seen it coming and was blindsided by Cruise's decision. In interviews, she said she had genuinely believed they would grow old together. The heartbreak was visible in her public appearances after the split. While Cruise remained quiet and controlled in his public statements, Kidman's emotional honesty drew sympathy and support from fans and the media. One of the most significant points of tension between Cruz and Kidman was Scientology, the religion Cruz has been dedicated to for decades. During their marriage, Kidman had reportedly participated to some degree, but after the divorce, she began to distance herself from the church. This move created an invisible but powerful wall between her and Cruz. Kidman also started reconnecting with people who had been pushed out of Scientology, individuals the church considered suppressive persons. For Cruz, this was viewed as a betrayal not only of him but also of his core beliefs. In the world of Scientology, loyalty and separation from outsiders is non-negotiable. By stepping away from the church and re-establishing ties with people Cruz was expected to cut off, Kidman positioned herself on the opposite side of one of the most important parts of his life. This divide extended to their children. Both Isabella and Connor grew up closely tied to Scientology, especially under Cruz's influence. As adults, they have maintained their alignment with the church, and their public connections remain with their father. Kidman, on the other hand, has spoken openly about her love for them, but has admitted she is not heavily involved in their lives. Reports frequently describe her as estranged from both children, something that has caused her visible pain over the years. Since their divorce, there has been no public reconciliation between Cruz and Kidman. They have not been photographed together in more than 2 decades. Even at events where both were present, such as the Oscars or other major Hollywood gatherings, they deliberately kept their distance. Unlike many celebrity exes who eventually reach some form of peace, Cruz and Kidman remain completely separate, both personally and professionally. Cruz went on to marry Katie Holmes in 2006, another high-profile relationship that ended in a very public split. Kidman eventually found lasting happiness with country singer Keith Urban, whom she married in 2006 and with whom she has 2 daughters. Despite the changes in their personal lives, the wall between Cruz and Kidman has never come down. The absence is most visible in family milestones. Cruz did not attend Connor's wedding, and Kidman's role in her children's lives remains complicated by their ties to Scientology. Insiders often point to the church as the central reason why the two have never reconciled. For Cruz, loyalty to Scientology has always come first, and Kidman's decision to step away sealed the distance forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one.